Hello, everyone. Welcome to our LinkedIn Live. Welcome to my podcast listeners of Nonprofit Nation. Thanks for joining us today. I am super excited about this conversation. I think it's incredibly timely and relevant and very useful to social media managers of all stripes, especially for nonprofits. I have with me the one and only Kate Meyers, Emery, PhD. Kate is the Senior Digital Comms Manager at Candid. And in my opinion, and in others, one of the most insightful voices speaking up about what social media professionals really need to succeed. So we're going to talk about her advice for social media managers in 2026 and also really what you need to succeed and not even just survive, but also really thrive in 2026. So, Kate, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Yay. So we were talking before we hit live about the year that Candid has had. I know you've been posting a lot. If people do not follow Kate on LinkedIn, please do. She's constantly posting very insightful things about what she's learned in her job in the trenches, posting and content and things like that, what's working, what's not working for Candid. So you were talking about some things that you learned, and I kind of want to start out with that and how you kind of changed up your content a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was an exceptional year and not necessarily in a good way. I mean, kind of beginning with inauguration, I think a lot of us had to very quickly pivot with the type of content that we were posting.
Yeah.
And so Candid had these plans for the year and campaigns that we were doing and what we were focusing on. And basically after inauguration, we abandoned what we had been doing and decided instead to shift our content to just being useful. So like, how can we help people? I think that became our big mantra for the entire year is what can Candid do to help other nonprofits right now? And so some of that looked to like really starting to focus more on data. So how many nonprofits receive government grants? What's happening with SNAP benefits and how will food aid nonprofits be able to step up? Will they? And so we really shifted our lens from just, social media is an extension of our mission to get people the information to do more good, and made it just, how can we help? What can we do? Like, this has been a tough year for nonprofits. What can Candid offer that is going to make this year slightly easier?
I love that. Coming from a place of value add and generosity, and also really it is part of your mission. I think it's tied to your mission to do the how to help nonprofits, to really educate them and to help build them up. So I think I love that strategy. I wish more organizations would lean into that strategy. But you are such an advocate for social media managers and digital comms managers, really advocating for their job, the importance of their job, and really letting people know the actual work that goes into it. And you've said that social media folks often end up as being the coach, captain, water bottle refiller, and the entire bench. And I know a lot of people are saying, yes, we hear this, we see this, we experience this every day. How did we get there? And what is your advice? Like, how can we start to fix this?
I think a lot of it has to do with the way that social media grew and evolved as a profession. Yes. So when I started doing social media back in 2010, we had two platforms to worry about. It was Facebook, it was Twitter, we had blogs, and we were fairly limited in what we could do even on those platforms. You could post text, you could post pictures, you were really even limited on the amount of text you could share. Video was not a thing at the time. And then, we add in Instagram, we add in ads, we add in video, and the quality expectations go up. So now, like, it isn't just, post whatever. It's, make custom graphics, and those graphics need to be really high end, and we need to have really good edited videos. And, now there's polls and carousels and shorts, and every platform has multiple things that you can do.
Mhm.
And social media just keeps escalating. And I think a lot of industries have managed to keep up with that to some extent. I think if you look at like social media conversations broadly, they're like, yeah, now we have teams of people, but the nonprofit sector has not been able to keep up with the
No.
infrastructure that's needed for social media. And, I don't know if we are going to be able to catch up as a sector. Nonprofits don't have the budgets, and social media in some places doesn't get the recognition that it still deserves. And while I'd
Mhm.
love to see investments, I don't think that is what's actually going to happen and is the answer. I think, repeatedly asking like, hey, can we get another person on the social team? It's not going to change things. Instead, I think what we need to start doing is really thinking about how we can shift how people think about social media. So instead of it being on one individual, having it be
Mhm.
a team sport.
Mm.
So having everyone participate in social media, asking people to take photos, to write more content, and it can all go through the social media manager to make sure that it's consistent and it has the right tone, but getting more people to be creators, having it be something that's a priority from the top down is really important. And then just getting really good at repurposing and reusing content. I think still nonprofits can do so much more with that. We're so like fearful, but like Candid reposts some of the
Mhm.
same things every single year, and every single year they do well.
Mhm. Oh, I love that. So I know that Candid actually does a really good job of the team sport sort of culture that you're talking about. How do you get your team members, your staff members, coworkers on board with this? I know that's something a lot of nonprofits struggle with.
Yeah, there's been a few different things we've experimented with over the years. Last year, we actually gamified the content creation within Candid. So we created a program where folks who were creating content got points, and then
Mm.
those points could be used to redeem swag that we had made that was specifically for this group of people. And it was very low level, like it was, pencils and pins and sunglasses. Um, but people were really into it. We ended up
Mm.
having a bunch of new staff members from Candid participate and share really unique viewpoints that hadn't been shared before. And we were able to get a lot more content than we normally do in a year, and from a more diverse range of people across the organization.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's one way you can gamify it. I think also just talking about it and sharing that, you do need help.
Mhm.
One of the things I like to do is regularly share things in like our Slack channels, like, hey, here's what's doing well. And look at the attention we're getting on social media for this photo somebody else took, not
Mhm.
me. Um, so I think that's helpful. And then just, doing all staff presentations of here's what social media includes, here's what we're looking for, here's why we need your help, here's
Mhm.
why, it's not just on an individual. I think all those are things that we've done at Candid that have helped make it so that people will think of me when they're at a conference. They'll remember to take selfies, they'll remember to capture content. It's kind of just keeping it top of mind.
That's exactly what I think a lot of people need to do is not just sort of send an email once a month and say, oh, we need some content for social media, but really bake it into the culture. And like you were saying, present it at staff meetings and talk to staff members about it because it is so important. It's not just a one person sport. Like it really is, should be a team sport. So, what is one myth about social media work that you wish you could bust permanently?
I think this is one you're going to agree with me on, and that's that
Yeah.
you don't have to do video.
Mhm.
Um, I've actually gotten into arguments on LinkedIn over this, and it is a hill I will gladly die on for the nonprofit sector. Video is great. It can do wonderful things. You don't need much other than a phone, the free nonprofit Canva account, to make a good video, but it's very time consuming. And it requires having people who are good on-screen personalities.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of the nonprofits we see who are doing it successfully, it's because they have someone who's willing to be on camera regularly and is good at it.
Mhm.
At Candid, when we experimented with it, it took about 30% of my working time to really take on video. So thinking about that of like, do you have that amount of time to do? It took at least a half dozen staff members. Now we have about 10 people who kind of rotate in and out of videos. And we ended up pulling back on video. We were doing it once a day, and then we went to twice a week. And now we're only doing it once a week because
Mm.
we're just not seeing the return for it. Honestly,
Oh.
carousels do better. They are less work and they do so much better for our brand right now. So,
Mm.
if you've got content that's working really well and you don't have the time for video, I think it's time to like let the guilt go and not worry about it. You don't have to do video despite what
Mhm.
other experts may say.
Wow, that is really interesting. So I love that because everything that you do, you are very data driven. And that's what first how we first met is when I read the blog post that you wrote about Candid's experiment with short form video because it was very scientific, it was very measurable, it was very time based. It wasn't just like, oh, we're going to start posting reels. It was no, we're going to post, and forgive me, I get it wrong, like 18 short form videos in 3 months and see how it goes. So I think being data driven and looking at the data and saying, okay, video is not doing as well for us as it used to, and carousels are doing really well now. I think that's pretty incredible. How often do you post carousels?
This year, we actually moved to doing it twice a week.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of flipped our like video production and our carousel production. And so we do one data focused carousel and then one more like educational carousel every week.
Oh, wow. That is really cool. And carousels, like you said, can be just created in Canva pretty easily. I love that because it's paying attention to what the trends are. And it's just like you said, if you're listening to all the experts that say you have to do video, you have to do video, and you're doing video and it's not working, and then you're doing carousels and it is working, you're going to get very confused. But look at what's working for you and your brand and kind of dive more into it.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge point, and I think a lot of social media managers could resonate with that. So you've been very vocal about how we all need to show our value internally. So what are some ways that social media managers can be loud about the work that we do and advocate for it in 2026?
Yeah, I think social media still in a lot of organizations is seen as a megaphone. It's seen as kind of the final thing. So once you've done all the planning, then you hand it over to your social media person and they post it. And I think there are a lot of different ways that you can slowly show the value so that you become part of those conversations, which will just make like everything better at your organization. So some of the ways that I do this at Candid is by just routinely sharing what types of messages work on social media. Social media is like, a giant petri dish for experimentation. Like you can throw something in there, see if it works, see if the messaging works, and you can try something completely different next week and you'll get instant feedback in a way that you can't really get from other mediums. So I like to share that of like, hey, this series of posts is doing really, really well. What if we did more around this? What if we did more articles about this or had our emails more like this? Second, I think, especially in this past year, using social media as a way to read the room about how your community is feeling, how your audience is feeling. I think that's really critical, even if it's just, how are they reacting to news that might relate to our cause. I was, especially at the beginning of the year, I would check in with the higher ups at Candid almost
Yeah.
daily of like, here's how people are reacting to different executive orders. Here's the good, here's the bad, here's what we need to be worried about. Because I could see things in a much quicker way and I could see how people actually felt about the news.
Mhm.
Third, I always just try to come to meetings like prepared with data. I think even if it's just a simple like, hey, we're talking about this topic. Here's some examples of what we've done in the past in social media and what's worked for this topic. I
Mhm.
think those are really good ways to just start being professionally loud, is really just like showing what you have and coming prepared with it. And the more that you show the good quality information that we get from social media, the unique lens that you have on your community and audience, the more people are going to start looking to you as that expert.
Mhm. I love it. We have so much going on in the chat. I'm so excited. So much. So many people are saying yes. Really 100% agree. I love that. I love this. Just more of a technical question. Trish asked, are carousels on LinkedIn posted from PDFs as opposed to just uploading several images like you might on Instagram?
Yes, yeah. For LinkedIn, when I'm talking about carousels, it's the documents, which are PDFs.
Yes.
Yeah.
So just making your whatever your Instagram carousel picture was, turning it into a PDF, and you can easily do that. I know I was struggling
Yep.
with that when I first made a carousel. It's like, why can't I upload this? Like it doesn't look right. But um, that just goes to show every channel is different, and you have to understand the unique nature and technical strengths and weaknesses of each
Yes.
platform. So, what advice do you have for someone managing social media that's the only one in their organization? Um, how can they do that
Yeah.
without kind of losing their mind?
So I'll just start by saying that I'm a solo social media manager. And
Mhm.
I also like social media is just part of my role. I also help with overseeing our email and I help with website and keynote presentations. So even at Candid, like I am still a, half
Mhm.
team or a
Yeah.
team of zero point 0.5, I guess, for social media. So I totally understand where people are coming from with this. Um, I think there are a few ways to make sure that you don't burn out. Especially at Candid, it is really getting other people on your team, it's having them write content, record videos. You might need to train them a little bit, but it's
Mhm.
totally worth the investment. I think also getting good at repurposing, less than 7% of your audience saw something the first time around. And it's
Uh-huh.
even lower than that now. I think LinkedIn, it's like 2% of your audience. So don't worry about reposting. I also love to take content and like repurpose it. So, like, a really cool chart can be a pop quiz, a carousel can be a video script. There's interesting ways to use the same data or the same sentiment or story and just remix it a little bit so that it feels different.
Mhm.
I think probably, though, for being a solo person, one of the most important things that you can do is track your time. If you want to have meaningful conversations with your manager about your workload, you need to understand what that workload is in data. It's a lot more challenging to have a conversation about, how long it takes to do video if you're like, oh, it takes a lot of time, versus me saying like, it takes 30% of my time if we want to run a whole video program. That's
Mhm.
measurable. Then we can say, all right, how do we free up 30% of your time so you can keep doing this?
Mhm.
I think having conversations that are more rooted in data take it from being a conversation that feels very like emotion driven to one that's more it's just a little bit easier to have, I think, with managers. So
Mhm.
whenever we're rethinking priorities at Candid, one of the things that I'll do is I'll track my time so that I can go into that conversation saying, okay, if we want to add this, it's probably going to take this amount of time. So I need to drop XYZ.
Right. Exactly. Because I do think a lot of us have been in that board meeting where a board member says we need to be on TikTok. And it's sort of like, well, that's an entire addition. It's not just something that you can add to your plate. And I think that is also a myth that I would like busted, is that every platform's the same and you can just sort of post on every platform the same thing. And, you certainly can repurpose a story or a video, but it takes a long time to learn the culture and the etiquette and what works on a platform and to do it right. So that is a huge thing that I think a lot of people can benefit from, especially time tracking. Like you said, this is how much time it takes to do this. And if you would like me to be on TikTok, this is how much time I think it's going to take. And this is what has to come off my plate in order to do that. And I don't think we advocate for ourselves well enough in that area. I want to shift to the sort of emotional labor behind managing social media posts. I am on the school board here, and I have made a conscious decision not to go into the community groups on Facebook, just for my own sanity and well-being. Nonprofit social media managers do not have the luxury of escaping these conversations. Oftentimes they come to them. So what advice do you have for people dealing with like negativity, abuse, and especially in the year that we've had?
Yes. Yeah,
How do you deal with it too?
This was a really hard year for that. One of the interesting things about working for Candid is that Candid is tagged in conversations that kind of run the full gamut. So anytime anyone needs any evidence about a nonprofit, they speak to Candid. So we are in all the conversations from, the most uplifting to the most horrific misinterpretations of nonprofit work. So one of the things that we did early into this year is we trained a few people on the comms team to monitor social media so that it would not just be on me. And so that way we're kind of spreading the load and the mental burden of having to look at this horrific content. So anytime that we're in a point where, we start noticing like, we're really getting tagged and stuff, or, we have to be really on top of what's happening right now with legislation and we need to be monitoring a lot more. We trade off who's doing it. I think this is like one of the best things that you can do is giving your team a way to check out from it. Because you do need breaks. You can't always be on. And I'm very grateful at Candid that we have enough folks who are able to do that. So even though they're not social media managers, they jump in and they help with the monitoring process. I think the other thing that I really appreciate about Candid is that we have very strict work boundaries. And so we do not work outside of our working hours. There is no burden to check social media beyond the hours of the workday. So I think that is something that like you can put in place yourself, or that you can ask your managers or leaders if they can enforce. But yeah, it is really good to have boundaries so that outside of your working hours, you're not also like checking that you have that space. I personally have basically stopped doing any type of social media, personal, fun, anything outside of work, just because my brain can't handle it. It's just like too much. And I think especially with this year, like I'm always thinking about it. And so I just fully check out from social media right now. The other small thing that's been weirdly helpful for me this year, and is actually research back, because of course I have to research everything.
I love it.
Watching funny cat videos actually improves your mood. It's something wild. Like if you watch a 2-minute cat video, you feel better. It's become a joke with my boss and I of like, when things get stressful, it's like, oh, go watch a cat video. You'll feel better. So I think like doing small things like that, like you have a really bad interaction on social media, take a 2-minute cat break and you'll feel better.
I love that. So Vu Lei, when Vu presents, I've seen him speak multiple times and do webinars. He talks about really hard truths, and he does really say some pretty harsh things like about the sector, but he intersperses little puppies in his slides, and he says, okay, we're going to take a little puppy break. Like, this was hard. We can do this. But we're going to look at puppies for a minute. So I really appreciate that. I love that cat videos. I think that's great. So I want to take questions. I see a lot of people in the chat, so please put your questions in there. I have a few more questions that I want to get to with Kate, especially what changes would you like to see from the platforms themselves? Moderation tools or data transparency, or just stop being so horrible? Like, what? I mean, that's not very specific. But are there changes you would like to see from the platforms that would make social media managers' lives easier?
I would love to see more protections for social media managers. I
Yes.
think there are simple things that these platforms could do, like blurring harmful content more, blurring text when it's harmful, even when it's like potentially emotional. I think that type of stuff, so that like you've got more warning coming into a DM that like this might be a lot to handle right now. I think small things like that could be really helpful. Even just things like allowing social media folks to use generic emails to control accounts, like not having to have your personal Facebook be attached to Facebook's account, I think could be really helpful. In a previous position, we had posted something that was approved by the whole nonprofit. People did not like it, and there was a lot of people who were calling for me, the social media manager, to be personally revealed. And I think those things are really scary. And I was lucky enough that like they weren't able to find my personal accounts, but having your personal accounts attached to something does mean there is a chance that people will find that out.
Right.
I also think having better APIs so that we could do more from tools like Sprout Social, Hootsuite, Buffer, Vista Social, any of those, so that we don't have to engage with the actual feeds as much. If we're on the platform and we're looking at the feeds, we're going to be subject to seeing things that we might not want to or be ready to. But if we can go through a different platform, we do have a little bit of mental protection to only focus on the things that we actually have to for our jobs.
Yep. Oh my gosh. I just think there's so much more that we could do. I'm assuming you heard that Australia banned social media for anyone younger than 16.
Yes.
And I know quite a few states in the US are doing that or have done that. And I just think personally the burden on us to be the monitors of what is safe and what is good is too much. And I completely agree with you. I think there's absolutely much more that the platforms can do to protect us and to protect young people, especially. So before I get to audience questions, I want to know from you, like if we're looking ahead to 2026, what's changing? Like what new skills or tools should social media managers be paying attention to?
Yeah, I think what I'm hopeful will happen in 2026 and what I think needs to happen is the like AI slop reckoning.
Oh God. Yeah.
Like social media is just so full of AI junk, and it's going to cause people to not trust any content that they see. Or they're going to like weirdly trust it all, which is not good either. And so I think we're going to have to get increasingly good at being authentic, which is such a slippery word that is very hard to pin down of what that actually looks like. But I think we're, as nonprofits, going to have to get good at being more human, bringing humans to the front. And, you know, I think Tasha Van Vleck from Nonprofit Hive recently said it's authenticity over polish. And I think that's going to be big. So yeah, instead of worrying about polish, worry about trust, worry about being human. I also think algorithms are going to get more customized.
Oh, you just posted about that, and I read it about how I just reposted it on my LinkedIn. So talk more about that.
Yeah, so YouTube and Instagram are now testing basically AI tools where you could say, I want to see more of ABC and less of XYZ. And my fear with that is nonprofits are going to get left behind. So I think it's going to be having to really focus on how do we bring value. So at Candid, what I'm thinking about is really doubling down on that helpfulness, the
Mhm.
education.
Mhm.
You know, people love to use social media to promote. That's not what it's good
Mhm.
at, and that's definitely not what it's going to be good
Mhm.
at. It should
Mhm.
be an extension of your mission. It should be used more for education, information. And I think we're really going to have to shift to that route and be
Yeah.
very careful to not look like ads.
Oh, right. I think that people could say they want more social causes, but you're right. Your content has to look like it's mission driven and storytelling in a social cause and not like an ad. Um, that's so interesting. All right, so let's answer Joanna's question. I think we have a data team. I'm assuming she's saying what data is the most important to track. So maybe what do you track?
Um, we have been really focusing on engagement rate this year.
Mhm.
So not just looking at like the engagements overall, but what percent of our audience is engaging. And then increasingly looking at comments. So anytime that we did posts that we felt were really impactful or we did major campaigns, we tracked all of the comments for it in documents because that felt like a much better barometer of
Mhm.
whether we were hitting our goal or not. Um,
Mhm.
this year in particular, I think things switched to like, let's just try to like brand awareness, reach as many people as possible to like, how do we reach the people who need this information the most?
Mhm.
And that might not be a big audience. So
Mhm.
in some cases, we were speaking to niches. And so instead of being like, oh, this got 1,000 engagements, it was more like, hey, someone from a food bank wrote that this was helpful for them. Like that is the type of thing that we are looking for. So I think
I
it's
love it.
engagement, but also like meaningful engagement. I personally love saves and shares.
Yes.
It would be awesome if LinkedIn shared more about like who's saving their content. Because those to me mean like not just did the person think this was useful, but they want other people to see it and they want to look at it again later.
Oh, love it. All right. This is an interesting question. Does Candid have data about social media engagement around youth serving organizations versus other organizations? Is there more engagement with carousels or short form videos from a younger audience?
So Candid does not have data about social media engagement around youth serving organizations. We have data about the social sector. So Candid has data about like how many youth serving organizations they are, what type of funding they get. We track more like funding to and from. We see where the money goes,
Mhm.
that type of information. But I can speak more to what we see. We do see that carousels definitely get more engagement.
Mhm.
And our Instagram is much younger than our other audiences, where, we're seeing video and carousels doing really well. Our TikTok is probably our youngest audience, um, although we don't necessarily see as good pickup there. I will say too, like Candid is a little bit unique as a nonprofit in that we're not speaking to like a cause community. We're speaking to like all nonprofits. So our
Mhm.
audience
Mhm.
does tend to be a little bit like older nonprofit professional in general. So I hope that kind of
Yeah.
answers the question.
No, I think so. Let's see. Hi, Becky. This is my friend Becky. Um, Curious the role you think community will play in amplifying and pouring into their favorite causes. How do nonprofits prepare? Great question,
I
Becky.
mean, I think community is going to be one of the most important things. Thinking about
Yeah.
like, how do we become more authentic? How do we reach community? Um, Trying to find those ambassadors is going to
Yeah.
be huge in the next year. And I think one of the ways that nonprofits can
Oh,
prepare
yeah.
for this is by making social media a form of generosity that you're asking for. So
Mhm.
inviting people to share your content as a way to get it out there. Um, you know, Especially if you're speaking to audiences who, might not have the most money to donate, having social media sharing as an option for generosity of like, you could donate to our cause, you could volunteer, or you could, share our posts so other people find us. I think
Love that.
leveraging our social media community is going to be huge and is a place that like a lot of nonprofits really could tap into.
I see this a lot with national organizations. So maybe the ACLU or Planned Parenthood, when sort of trolls or there are hateful people leaving hateful comments, their community comes to their rescue and stands up for them and sticks up for them and challenges misinformation and just really talks about what the cause means to them. So I love seeing that. I think you're absolutely right that it's going to be the community that you've built rather than the platforms themselves that are going to outlast and really help you do more impactful work. So as we wrap up, I love this question. If you could give not even every social media manager a sticky note for their monitor, what would it say?
I I have like so many random sticky notes on my desk that I actually went through like
Yes, I love a sticky note.
which one of these do I want to actually share with people?
Mm,
And I think the one that has been coming back to me the most recently is comparison is the thief of joy. Whenever I looked in on LinkedIn, I'm always seeing, mega creators who are talking about the amazing things they're accomplishing with their big budgets and their teams of 10. And, they have wonderful ideas that I can borrow from, but most of what they're talking about can't actually help me because I'm a team of one. And it just ends up kind of like wrecking my vibe.
mm,
Like, I'm never going to be like, Candid is not going to be Duolingo. We're not going to be Liquid Death. We're not going to be, we're not even going to be Red Cross. Um, and so I think one of the things that I've increasingly tried to do is not compare against others, but compare
mhm.
against ourselves. We recently did a look back of all of Candid's data for communications to 2021 and did all these like amazing colorful charts comparing how much we've grown. And it is wild to see just like from that point how
Yeah.
much we have changed. And so I think instead of like being jealous of what another nonprofit is able to do, I think it's like open ourselves up more for like collaboration. So, if you're looking at Candid and you're like, oh, I wish we could do what Candid's doing, instead of like having that like wreck your day, like reach out to me,
Mhm.
ask me how we're doing it, and I will tell
Yeah.
you. Like, I think
Yes.
turning away from comparison and doing more collaboration. Now when I see someone who's doing something really well, I will reach out and I will find their social media person and say, how did you do this? What's your team size? What's your budget? How
Mhm.
how could I potentially like borrow and build on those ideas? And I think, we can work together to build the sector up. We're not competing against each other. So less
Yes, a
comparison,
rising
more
tide lifts all
collaboration.
ships.
Yes.
And that's how we connected. I was just loving what Candid was doing and I read your blog post and I said, I really want to meet this girl. Like I love everything about this. And that's usually how I meet people that I have on my podcast or speak at my summit. It's just I see people doing cool things and it's so amazing how generous people in this sector are with their advice and with what they're doing. But I really want to say, Kate, like I have not seen any other social media managers in the sector be as open and transparent as you have been on LinkedIn with your experiments, with what's working, with what's not working, and advocating for social media managers. So I really appreciate that. I want everyone listening to the podcast, everyone watching this LinkedIn Live to follow Kate, because I just think you are just such a breath of fresh air, but a real thought leader in this space. I just appreciate everything that you do. So where can people connect with Candid? Where do you want them to follow Candid online and follow you?
Yeah, I think a great place to see what Candid is doing is on our LinkedIn. It's, the platform that we're focusing the most energy on right now. And it's a great space to learn more about what's happening in the nonprofit sector more broadly. You can also follow us on Instagram if you want to see the more like educational, fun side of Candid. And then for me, like, find me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to connect and chat with people and share what we're doing. And I will say, part of the reason why I have like the freedom to share so much and be transparent is because like that is a value of Candid.
I was going to ask that because I don't think a lot of nonprofits would be that open and transparent about what's working, what's not working.
Yeah.
But that's like a cultural value of your organization.
Yeah, we are, very open with what we do, and we want to share what's happening. And so I've been lucky enough that I'm allowed to like share, like, hey, this did not work. Someone else can steal this idea and see if it works for them. But yeah, I would encourage other people to like look into their org and ask if you can do something similar, because we could learn so much more from each other if we all just started sharing like, hey, I tried this thing, it worked or it didn't work. Here's what I got from it. It would just be amazing. And yeah.
Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. We're going to end the live stream right now. Thanks so much for listening, for watching. Follow Kate on LinkedIn and follow Candid everywhere they are on social media. So thanks so much for sharing your expertise. I know it's a busy time of year, but thanks for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.